Well, hello and welcome to Take the Wheel, the very first of the new People's Forward podcast series. Behind the mics today are Asha and Ben. And Ben, you are a Team GB Paralympian, a man of many talents. Thanks so much for being a part of this. It's absolutely rubbish outside, but how cool is this?
Yeah, it's very cool. I've not done too many podcasts before, so it's nice to try something a little bit different.
Yeah, now tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to chat to Asha in just a sec, but it's wonderful to have you here because you're a very busy chap.
Yeah, so I'm a two-time Paralympian in the sport of wheelchair racing, so athletics. So basically, I'm quite good at going around in circles. I'm
good at going around in circles.
Tokyo was my second Paralympic Games. I've done I think 4 or 5 World Championships and probably the same number of Europeans. I started athletics in 2011, back part of 2011, and was rubbish to begin with. And then got my first GB vest a few years later in a European Championships in Swansea in 2014. It's been a kind of upward curve for the last few years, and just enjoying the ride.
Wow.
Literally enjoying the ride.
Yeah,
exactly. We've got to ask loads about that. Asha, lovely to see you.
Lovely
How
to
are
see you. I'm well, thank you. Lovely to see you both again.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Now tell us what you do at People's Forward. You're a huge cog in the wheel.
So I'm the social media manager at People's Forward, doing our very first podcast. I've been there for 5 years. So it's very exciting. It's always on the go. It's very nice. I've worked with both of you before on various projects, so it's nice to be here to actually be filming our first podcast together.
Yeah.
Couldn't have asked for better guests to try and, bring this to
pressure.
life. I know.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
not at all. Not at all.
And how is it going in the world of content? Because content creation is kind of such a buzzword, isn't it, now when it comes to kind of marketing and sales and social media, and actually there are so many different facets that go behind that. It can be quite complicated, but doing something like this, I guess, is just another way for reaching out to a different audience.
No, definitely. There's so many different platforms that we can now use, and that we film in something like this, as we all know, there's so many different content outputs, and it's great to just be able to for everyone watching to just be able to have a conversation with us and be part of something that they can involve themselves in, no matter if it's audio files that they may be listening to this. Obviously, not everyone's watching it on video or watching it through YouTube channels. It's definitely it's definitely a new challenge for us.
And Ben, I suppose in terms of social media, you must have utilised that to great extent yourself, because being an athlete and a Paralympian, I mean, it's kind of part of the job now too, isn't it?
Yeah, I probably don't use it as well as I should.
It's admitting this.
Yeah, like
at least that's the starting point.
Social media isn't something that kind of comes naturally to me. I'm not a kind of great person at kind of boasting about what I'm doing or saying that I've done amazing at this. I'm more a kind of, right, that's done, let's move on to the next thing. So it's something that I need to get a lot better at, and it's been a kind of learning process and kind of finding my own kind of vibe with what kind of content I want to put out, because I don't want it all to be kind of the same stuff. I like to try and mix it up a little bit. So it's a work in progress, but social media plays a massive part in just trying to get me across as a person, because I think as an athlete it can often get lost as kind of what you are as a person. It becomes solely about your sport, and that is your defining factor, whereas I like to think there's other strings to my bow. And it's not just all about kind of athletics and wheelchair racing and everything that kind of comes with that.
Do you feel the pressure, like with social, like to post content that you've achieved something great? So say if you do race and unfortunately it's maybe not the strongest race on the day for whatever reasons, it's you wouldn't post. Like, it's one of those things, like, is the pressure there? Like, are you aware of what you post, or is it, I've competed and that's brilliant as is, no matter what the position is?
I think for me, it's more of an internal thing. I think if I don't race well, it's more of like I have to deal with that internally before I want to vocalize anything and kind of work out, right, where did things go wrong? What could I have done better? How do I kind of get over whatever hurdle it is before I then go shouting to the rooftops that I had a bad day at work? And also vice versa. Like with athletics and with elite sport, you try and stay in like a neutral zone. You don't want to get too high when things are great, and you don't want to get too low when things are bad. So I'm also quite conscious that you don't want to be putting out there that you're doing well, because it can change in an instant. So it's just, I try and find kind of that happy medium, and it's something that, like I say, I'm not amazing at. There are kind of people out there that are really, really hot on promoting themselves across social media and getting that message across. And I think for me, I'd just try and do it in a natural way. I don't have people doing my social media posts for me. It's always me on the other end of a phone replying to messages and doing posts and things. It's just about trying to find that balance between knowing when to switch off. Because I think Instagram and Twitter and even stuff like TikTok now, people are only showing an aspect of life that they want to show. And it's knowing when to take yourself away from that to make sure that you're not going, oh, well, everyone else's life is so perfect, and kind of judging yourself to those standards that no one can sustain.
Your TikTok channel is brilliant. Like,
it's just the dog.
Like, I know, but not even like, it's like so natural. Like, obviously, because that's probably like a good view that you have on social, because everything that you do comes across so natural. Like, it's just, this is my life. This is how I get in a car. This is how I go to training. This is how I walk my dog. This is my beautiful dog, because his dog is beautiful. Like, you're very lucky.
Check it out. What kind of dog is it?
A yellow lab. So he's just turned 2. He had his second birthday at the end of April.
Beautiful.
Oh, I've got black lab.
He could literally just create an Instagram account for. Well, there is
He's
one.
got one.
But
Yeah,
he already has his own Instagram.
There
So
you go.
That's not my responsibility.
so you can't even just steal him. But your channels are I think, like you say, it's trying to find that medium. Like, you don't want to come across as somebody who focuses in on only the good, because it's not always good, and there is hard times training and just in general life. But it's also showing that part of it and trying to find, right, what is of interest to people and what do they want to see.
And I think if you're always pushing sponsored content or things to try and get yourself sponsorship or appearances or more, like, people lose touch with that because they know you're only using it for a tool. Whereas I think if you try and put across who you are as a person, people connect with it a little bit more.
Do you find, though, that there is the pressure to be more intense when it comes to social media? I mean, there'll be many athletes and, Paralympians and Olympians, people who maybe have just competed in world champs or whatever, people across the board, basically, who are at elite level, top of the game. And they do utilize it to their advantage. And actually, some in my experience as a sports journalist, some athletes actually utilize things like Instagram and TikTok much more than traditional media now, and actually to the extent that they won't almost engage with traditional media, so newspapers, TV, radio. Whereas in the past, maybe I could have phoned someone up quite easily and got an interview with one of these athletes. Now they may choose to put something out on social media first, whether it's Instagram, as I say, or elsewhere, but it's quite interesting. It's how things have sort of changed in that respect.
It's different. There's a different dynamic between Olympic and Paralympic guys. I think in terms of, and I don't want to kind of generalize here, but I think in terms of the Paralympic movement as a whole, we've still got so much growth just to get on that level playing field. So I think the athletes within that movement are a lot more open to kind of talk to everyone and get that message across, because it needs to grow, and the whole movement in terms of disability sport as a general and Paralympic sport needs to keep growing. And the best way to do that is to chat to the people that are able to get that message across and do it in an authentic way that doesn't rub people up the wrong way and doesn't close that door, because at some point you're going to need coverage and to really kind of show that the Paralympic movement is more than just 2 weeks every 4 years. It's kind of a constant 4-year kind of cycle. Whereas I think the Olympic guys and Olympic athletes and the Olympic movement as a whole is already at the kind of pinnacle of what sport is. And that's not to say the Paralympics isn't there, but I think in terms of media marketing and the whole approach to it, there's still a lot of growth there. So I think the athletes have to be a little bit more approachable in kind of just how they are within people, because they still need to get to a level where they can afford to do athletics as a job or to kind of have the same kind of luxuries that the Olympic side do.
Do you think people are scared? Like, do you think it's not like a scared factor? Do you think it's a factor on, they obviously are so interested in what you do in your sport, and you're more than just a Paralympian. There's so much more to you. But do you think in that aspect they're nervous about coming forward and having people on podcasts and speaking about the fact, well, you are a Paralympian? Like, do you think people are they're not 100% sure what to say or how to act or what you can ask?
Yeah, I think disability as a whole is still quite a taboo subject. I think it's something that people are really curious about but don't want to ask the wrong questions or ask them in a way that might offend people, because I think we're in a culture now where things can be misinterpreted quite easily. Whereas I think the majority of people I've met within disability sport are very open with the fact that oh, I've got a brain injury and this is how it affects me, or oh, I've broken my back when I was a teenager and this is how it affects me. And I think being able to have those open conversations will then help grow everything else. But I think in terms of where Paralympic sport is, I don't believe it's still broken into mainstream culture yet. I think there was a big movement in London 2012, and Channel 4 have done an amazing job in kind of pushing that profile of Paralympic sport. But since London, I've seen a kind of drop off and a kind of return to kind of the norm that was kind of before London 2012, where it comes out every 4 years.
I think you do a brilliant job at it, honestly. Like, I think it's so easy for everyone to take a back seat and think, oh, somebody else will do it. Somebody else will speak about Paralympics. Somebody else will speak about being a young man in a wheelchair and all these different aspects that affect your life. But it takes somebody to actually do it. Like, it takes somebody to create TikTok content like you create, to give an insight into it, and for people to then interact with it. It only becomes more norm the more people see it. That's just the way of social. So the more content you can produce that's kind of along those lines is surely only helping everything move forward. Like, you have to play a role in helping it.
I think we need to ask you why you think there's been a drop-off. What do you mean by that?
I just think in terms of before London 2012, there was Paralympic sport, Paralympics, athletes and disability as a general in kind of general marketing culture within a mainstream setting. And it was very much pushed that London 2012 was the start of the next 4 years until Rio, and there was TV coverage of World Championships, there was TV coverage of Europeans, and that was all very much on mainstream TV. It was easy to find, it was well advertised, and disability was seen as a marketable thing. And I think it kind of tapered down towards Rio. There was obviously the whole kind of debacle with kind of Rio as an organisation in terms of where the country as a whole situated the Paralympic Games and the kind of issues around funding for that. And I think as a Paralympic movement, we made a really good crack at Rio in terms of, as athletes there, we weren't sure whether we'd have a games to go to beforehand. So the whole kind of atmosphere around Rio was a little bit more somber than it probably definitely was before London. But companies still bought into it because they saw the effect of what disability sport was after London. But that was then 8 years ago before Tokyo came around. And then you had the pandemic on top. And suddenly there was a kind of priority switch because, yes, the Paralympic Games is a huge event. It's massive. It's the biggest event we'll ever do. But it was 8 years since we saw the success of London 2012. And unfortunately, because of COVID, Japan didn't get the chance to show that Paralympic sports could still fill 80,000 seat stadiums. So because we didn't have that platform to put it on, the kind of wider pop culture side of kind of media, mainstream kind of life, didn't engage with Paralympic sport in the same way that they did 8 years ago in London.
It's interesting you say that because I was fortunate enough, Asha, to be at the Tokyo Olympics. So I did both the Paralympic Games and I did the Olympics. And hands up, I was blown away by the Paralympics. I was lucky enough to be doing the swimming. So, I mean, it was serious stuff, you know, and meeting the most incredible athletes, just awe-inspiring. Personally, I guess one of the biggest things for me that I took out of it was I didn't feel, you know, any differently towards the athletes as a reporter. I treated them in exactly the same way, as did all of my media colleagues, as I would an Olympian. So I think from our perspective, there was no difference. In fact, you guys were amazing to deal with because the stories, your attitude was just phenomenal. You know, you were actually in some cases a lot easier to speak to, a lot more forthcoming, which you've already alluded to. But for me, I guess I was left wondering when it comes to some of those games, particularly that games where it was really restricted because of COVID. It's hard enough for us reporters to be wearing masks everywhere. In Japan, you had to wear a mask everywhere you went. I mean,
that,
walking around, absolutely everywhere. Outside, inside, didn't really matter. When we were, and this was really hard actually. And I kind of took this for granted at the beginning when I first started doing the Paralympics. We had to wear masks to do the mixed zone interviews, which were the interviews straight out of the pool. So the athletes would come out of the pool and I would be standing at the side with a lot of other reporters. And basically we would just stick a microphone in their face and just start asking them questions. It's probably the last thing that you guys want, you know, when you finish competing. But we were wearing masks. Now for the Olympians, that probably was hard enough. But if you think about it, a lot of the Paralympians we were speaking to may have been hard of sight or hard of hearing.
Yeah.
So actually, it was
must have
quite
been,
complicated and quite hard for them to understand. So things like that, I just wondered from a Paralympian's point of view, how did you find that whole experience in the round of being in that environment in a country so far away from your own?
So I think in terms of when we got to Japan, the village was as normal as any other Paralympic village, any other event, because everyone was tested, everyone was negative. You had to do tests every morning. So we knew everyone there was by and large quite safe. So the food hall, the kind of whole Paralympic village experience, might have not been up to the kind of buzzing atmosphere that you'd get with kind of what I experienced in Rio, but it was relatively normal. Like you could go for a coffee in the canteen and it felt normal. Whereas a holding camp beforehand, we had half a hotel and you were in your room, you went training, you came back, you had a small amount of team space that you could mingle in, but by and large you were kind of quite restricted in terms of that. So when we got into the village, it was a bit like, it's a bit of a relief. And then when you go to a competition venue, you're there for a reason, so you don't really kind of think about anything else. You're like, I have to keep a mask on until I'm warming up. Right, okay, I'm warming up. And then you just kind of go with it. We were very kind of lucky that the BPA, so the British Paralympic Association, gave us a lot of information before we went on kind of what the COVID protocols would be and everything else, so we could kind of get ourselves used to it. And nothing kind of makes it real until you're there. But once you know that you've got a Paralympic heat to try and get through, you're more worried about the heat than you are about anything else. So you just kind of go with the flow a little bit and kind of let your focus be on that one thing, rather than kind of think, I've got to wear a mask there, or I have to do this to make sure that everything, like, those things kind of come second nature. You just kind of worry about what you've got to do, which in my case is go around in circles twice.
You make it sound so easy.
And I've actually seen Ben train. So I've seen you. Well, obviously in our last time we worked together, you weren't training as such, but we had gone to Grangemouth Stadium to film Ben doing what he does brilliant. And I did see them compete when I was younger in Qatar, because he'd been to Doha. So you don't realise, like, the actual sport itself, like, how intense it is. Like, see, when we were with you, even just, like, obviously, like, that was very behind the scenes because you had all your equipment and you had to get changed and there was so much that comes with it. It's, like, the sport itself isn't, like, it's not an easy thing to do. Like, you're saying you're doing 21 miles per hour on your, like, round in circles. Like, it's just up there with the swimmers and the runners and everything. Like, it's a very, like, no able-bodied person could just do that. Like, it's a really intense type of sport, which I would love. Like, I would hope that it starts to get the media coverage and everything that you want.
I think across the marathon circuit, it's definitely getting there. You've got the Albert World Series.
Yes.
You've got wheelchair racing linked in with all the major marathon series, and you have phenomenal athletes that are doing crazily quick times every time they go out, and they're getting the coverage there. So I think in terms of marathons and distance, that kind of outside of IPC, outside of World Athletics, that circuit's kind of embracing wheelchair racing, embracing Paralympic sport. We've still got a long way to go in sport, and it's going to be one of those things that just keeps growing. But I think we just need to try and make it as marketable as possible, because if we can get the sport as marketable, you're going to get more people involved. You're going to get more. I started racing competitively because I saw people race in London 2012. I was like, I want to be there. So if we can make it visibly, not appealing, but kind of there, the next generation of athletes have got someone to look up to that they're not having to then try and find online or trying to find.
With so many sports, isn't it? You kind of got to see it to be it, right? Well, you're listening to Take the Wheel, the very first of the new People's Forward podcast series. Hope you're enjoying it so far. I think actually we need to ask Ben about your past, because it'd be wonderful to talk about what you're doing now, and also a little bit more about the sport, because actually a lot of people won't know too much about wheelchair racing, so I think it's important we do that. But talk us through your disability and everything behind that, if you don't
Who
mind.
is Ben? What does he love? What does he hate? What does he do?
So my disability is cerebral palsy. So in basic terms, it means that I've got a brain injury. So when I was born premature, and I had the umbilical cord wrapped twice around my neck. So my brain didn't get enough oxygen when I was born. So part of the brain that deals with muscle coordination, muscle spasm, muscle tone, depth perception, spatial awareness, all of that got damaged. So it means that the way my brain sends signals down to my arms and legs when I try and walk or kind of do certain tasks is all a bit jumbled up. So the way I try and explain it is an able-bodied person will send down and say you wanted to move your hand to pick up a pen. Your brain will send a signal down going 1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll pick it up nice and smoothly. Mine will do it in kind of 3, 2, 4, 1. And it's all a bit jumbled, so it takes a bit longer to process. And the way that the muscles kind of react to that's going to be slightly different, sorry. And then when it comes to doing tasks, like I'm fortunate I can walk a little bit, but it's very much kind of up on my tiptoes, and a bit like a penguin would waddle around. So it's very easy to fall over, and the way your muscles react to that is they're always quite tight. So I'm sure you guys have probably experienced cramp before. That's how my legs are the majority of the time. But because I've had it since I was like tiny, I've never known any difference. It's not sore, but
That's
no one has ever explained that to me before. Do you know
That's
that?
just unbelievable.
Yeah, I've met lots and lots of people with cerebral palsy, but I've never had that explained.
Like the whole cramp.
Yeah.
Like, that's how
and it's slightly different. Like every person's slightly different. Every bit of CPs, it's kind of a spectrum. It's not kind of you're in that box and everyone's symptoms are the same. So like mine will be slightly different from someone else's, but that's kind of by and large where my disability is. So in terms of kind of just growing up through school, I had a very, very pushy parents who just wanted to get me into everything. I have a little.
Is that your mum or your dad?
Mum, maybe.
Good on her.
Yeah. I have a little brother and a little sister that are both able-bodied. So whatever they were doing growing up, I wanted to do it. I've always been competitive, and the thought of my little brother being able to do something better than me or quicker than me, I hated it. So whatever he was trying to do, I tried to keep up.
Big Brother Ben was right there.
Yeah, exactly. And going through schools, I was always through mainstream schools, so all my friends are able-bodied. And like any young kid, you look at footballers, you look at rugby players, and you're like, that's what I want to do. I've always been sport mad. So I can remember at primary school and secondary school, I wanted to play football with my friends at lunch like every young lad does. But I can't waddle around a football pitch. Like I just end up in a heap on the floor. So my mates decided, right, stick you in goal, and if you fall over, you got a chance of stopping it. So that was the kind of So that was the kind of environment I've always grown up. It was just normal. Like I was the only kid with a disability in my school. I was the only kid with my style of CP in my secondary school. So all my friends and all the people in my year group just knew that was me. But it wasn't until I got to secondary school that I really found disability sport. I had a really, really supportive PE teacher who literally went up to me and was like, right, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a crack at rugby? Do you want to have a crack at hockey? Do you want to have a crack at basketball? Yeah, I'm not going to turn it down.
I'll do them all.
I'll do it all.
That's so cool that you have someone who was saying that.
I was like, I might not be very good at them all, but I'll give it all a crack. And he was like, right, we'll find a way of getting around it. So
even as a young kid though, like that,
totally.
to have that like enthusiasm and want to do something, because I can imagine it's easier to be like, no, like I'm not going to put myself in a situation that could be embarrassing, especially when I remember being like young and thinking, well, I won't do it, because you don't even know what could happen, but something brilliant could happen.
But to me,
it's the opportunity.
It's to grab the opportunities.
To me, it wasn't like that though, because all my friends had always just treated me normally, so I'd never seen myself as disabled. Like I knew slightly different. Like there was things that I was good at and things that I wasn't good at, but everyone's like that. But I just thought, right, I'll give it a crack. And then quickly realised I wasn't very good at rugby. I couldn't walk around that much. Basketball, the school were able to get a load of basketball chairs in. So for one of the PE lessons, I went from being at the back of the class, like ability-wise, to seeing all my friends struggle to push a wheelchair around. And because I'd had that experience, I was like, I'm actually top of the class. And it switched the dynamic a bit, and that kind of got me invested in parasport. So our PE teacher did some research and looked at different kind of disability sport groups and stuff. I started off with swimming. That was my kind of first sport. And I swam for probably the ages of 12 to 15.
Wow, I think I've read this about you.
Yeah.
And then you found out you were allergic.
Yeah, I was allergic to chlorine.
Only took 3 years.
I remember reading it thinking, I wonder if it's a sensitive topic. Like, let's not mention the chlorine. Like, you were a swimmer, but you were allergic to
very
the chlorine.
sensitive.
I think I was more stubborn and I didn't want to admit that was maybe an issue. But I used to come out with like just itchy skin and bloodshot eyes. It wasn't anything bad, but it was enough that it was irritating.
So how did you find out that you were allergic to it?
Just after every session,
Something's
not quite right. So yeah, there was that, and then I was like, right, realistically, this is not. At that point, I'd seen Beijing on the TV. I'd seen all the advertisements building up to London. I was like, I really want to go to a Paralympic Games at some point. I need to find something that I want to do. And my PE teacher, there was a multi-sport kind of disability come try day. So he was like, look, we can get a teacher to come with you to go along to that. I was the only kid that they were going to take. So I was like, yeah, if that's okay, I'll go along. And I went along, tried a load of different things, and tried athletics. And the kind of person from England Athletics there was like, right, we've got a talent ID day at Loughborough on this date. Can you come to it? I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. Forgot about it, completely forgot until the week before. And I looked at my emails going, oh, Mum, we've got this week.
Oh, no.
Can you take me?
No.
And luckily we were able to get there. And originally it was mainly for seated throws because I was, let's say, slightly rounder as a child. I like my food. So it was mainly for that. And then I looked at in Loughborough, when you go into the high performance centre, you've got like a upper floor, which is mainly kind of throws and jumps. And then the lower floor, you got the indoor track and leaning onto the outdoor bit. So I looked down over the ledge and I saw race chairs. These things with 3 wheels and they just look cool. And I turned around to the guy that had asked me to come, Joe, and I was like, can I go do that instead? Like, that just looks so much more fun. He was like, yeah, if you want, go try it. So I sat in a chair and it's the most uncomfortable position you could ever imagine getting in. And that was just the start. Like, trying to get myself in was a nightmare. But got out on track and I felt like I was going really quick. I was probably like really not going that quick at all. But I got the bug. And slowly from there, I was able to borrow a chair from Job, the guy that kind of got me into the sport. And he then coached me for right up until Rio.
Wow.
But kind of just gradually got better and better and kind of got my own equipment from there. And it kind of just snowballed. And then, yeah, did London Mini Marathon the year that I started, which is the last 5K of the London Marathon route. And that's for kind of juniors. Mm-hmm. But they have a wheelchair section. And I think a lot of British Paralympians made that was their first race. It was Dave Weir's first race, Hannah Cockcroft's first race. Wow. And it's just it's a good one for people that are new to the sport to kind of come and
at least compete, like to get the feeling. Yeah.
So that was my first race and I was hooked because the last 5K of London Marathon, you got people coming out even in the morning and it was just a good atmosphere. And then I think just timing worked out quite well because London was the summer after. So I managed to get tickets to go watch London 2012 and saw Hannah and Dave race, and they were the two kind of faces for athletics on that games. And I was just like, right, that's wheelchair racing. It can fill an 80,000 seat. I want to do that. Like, I will find a way of doing it. And luckily, after a couple of years of being absolutely rubbish, I kind of found a bit of a technique for it and kind of got there. And yeah, made my GB debut at 18 in 2014 at the Europeans. Won a bronze medal there, completely out of the blue, didn't expect it. And then from there, did the World Championships in Qatar. That was my first Worlds. And then on the back of that, Rio. And then it's been kind of that cycle pretty much ever since.
It makes you, I'm sitting here thinking, what have you done?
I know.
Like I said, I go around in circles.
Why?
You did more than that. No, I mean, it's amazing. It's so inspirational, your story, because it's not, you haven't kind of followed your traditional route, but also, I don't know whether you agree, Yasha, it's just, I love the fact that you've kind of done it yourself. So it seems that you've had people helping you on the way quite a lot, like your mum, you know, when you were younger, and then your coach and everything. But, and I think this is true of so many athletes who do reach the top level, you've done so much of that yourself, and you've pushed yourself to, you know, you've figured something out. You said, this is what I want to do, that's where I want to be, and you've just fought really hard to get it. And actually, I think we take that for granted quite a lot because, yes, the pool of talent won't be as big, let's say if it was an 800 metres able-bodied race, for example, but the pool is still going to be big. Yeah. So what you've achieved is pretty incredible. What does it feel like when you're on one of the race chairs? I've never been in one. I've never
Yeah,
sat in one.
to begin with, it was quite uncomfortable. Because take the chair design that I'm in now, you're kneeling, so your knees are kind of flat, your feet are touching your bum, and you're kind of scrunched up in a little ball. So it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. And the way I kind of say to everyone, when you're pushing well and when you're going quick, it feels effortless and it feels great. But when it's a hard day and when it's one of those days you've just got to try and get through, it's really tough, because the harder you try, the slower you'll go.
I remember thinking that because last time we had gone, and I actually didn't really think about it. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that we were going together to film, and that was as far as I had really thought. And watching you get into it, and the position that you're in is like, you cannot be comfy. Like, you cannot. And I remember speaking to your girlfriend, and she's like, "Oh, I've tried it. Trust me, it's the most uncomfiest like position." And you just make it so easy. Like, you were in and you were gone, and the speed that you were doing, and I was like, he's just done that. Like, and the position that you're in is that like that cannot, like you say, cramp. Like, I would have toe cramp like straight away just from like the way that your feet all are. But it is amazing. Like, it's totally just. I remember watching you train. I was like, my gosh, like, to find that as, even just to look at that and be like, that's what I want to do. I said, God, he must be. There's something, you're a little bit crazy somewhere. Like, somewhere, like, definitely.
But yeah, I think the chair position is always going to change, and I think technology is going to keep up. But I'm restricted a little bit in the kind of movement that I've got with my disability, in terms of, because my hips are quite tight, because my hamstrings are quite tight, I'm not able to get in this aerodynamic position as I'd ideally like, but I make what I've got work. And it's taken me a 3 or 4 chairs worth of kind of trial and error to get a position that's comfortable, that I can be in for kind of an hour's long training session, an hour and a half, and not be wrecked at the end of it. But also that when I come to race is worth trying to squeeze myself into. So it's taken a bit of time, but yeah, like I say, when everything's comfy and you're pushing well and you're pushing quick and the sun's out, there's no better feeling. When it's cold, wet, miserable, and you've just got to try and like muddle through it a little bit, it's tough.
Is there a sense of freedom? I've spoken to a wheelchair racer before about this, and was asking them how it feels when you're out there, and it's that sense of freedom that they kind of noted. Is it the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, I never know what running would feel like, because I've never been able to do it. But being able to go quick, and that feeling and that buzz that gets it, is what I could kind of imagine being able to run would feel like. And just that kind of, I guess freedom's not the right word, but just that kind of excitement that comes with it, is what I kind of get from it. It's just, I still enjoy training and I still enjoy racing, which I think is a massive part of why I've been able to do it for as long as I have done. And realistically, it's not been that long of a career, and I've not done what I've wanted to do yet. I've not won a Paralympic medal. I've not won a World Champs medal yet, so I've still got a long way to go. But the fact that I'm still enjoying it shows that I picked the right sport for me.
Because surely that's half the battle. Like, it must be, like, if you enjoy it, those days where it's wet and it's miserable and you're like, I really don't want to do this, there's something in you that's like, no, I will still do it.
I still moan about it.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I'm sure it's just as easy to turn the car around and be like, no, not today. I'm just going to go and get some food and sit at home and not train, because...
For me, it's not that easy, because I know that I'd just do it anyway. I'd moan about it when I'm there, but I'd get it done.
That just shows so much about you, though, like, as a person. Like, because I would be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm on my way home.
That's
like,
why you're not an Olympic
that's why I'm not an Olympic athlete. Like, it is, though, because it's like, you have to have this mentality.
Oh, yes.
Like, it's definitely a strong mentality to make you go and do it, because anyone, like you say, like, everyone just turn around and go home, but you're like, no, I'll moan about it, but I'll do it. So that's just who you are. It
becomes part of your life.
Yeah, it has been my life for 10, 11 years, and professionally it's been my life since 2014.
Yeah.
So it's just been one of those things that you just get on with. Some days, like, I'm sure, Ashley, your job, there's some days that you don't want to go into work, but you just have to.
Never. Ashley always wants to go into work.
It's never a thing, honestly. It doesn't
but
exist.
It's exactly the same. I think people sometimes look at Olympic athletes, or like elite athletes in general, put them on a pedestal and be like, oh, they never have bad days. They get to do what they want, what they want as a job. And actually, there's some really dark moments in sport, because especially with athletics, a lot of time you're on your own. So when things are tough, you've got to kind of really dig yourself out of some horrible places to be able to get to where you know you're going to be when things are good. So I think, a lot of it is a mentality thing, but I try to just get on with it.
What about things like your daily routine? So food and training.
Yeah, so training wise, I try and train twice a day, 6 days a week. So it'll be a mixture of stuff in the gym, S&C, strength and conditioning, and then chair sessions. So it depends which time of the year I'm in. When I'm in the winter, I'll probably be doing 3 S&C sessions a week, and they'll start at kind of 6:30 in the morning till about kind of 8 o'clock. And then I'll go to work all day, and then I'll train in the evening. And over the winter, that'll be kind of a lot of mileage, and just getting kind of a good steady base in. And then the closer I get to the comp season, I'll start just kind of tapering down and doing some nice quick stuff and kind of easing myself into that kind of race mode. So it just kind of depends what I've going on that year and things like that. In terms of diet, I think I went through a stage where I was almost borderline obsessive with what I eat, and kind of not having that take over my life and not being able to have that kind of off switch. And I think that's probably where moving up to Scotland has kind of helped me just kind of get a bit of space and be able to work out what works for me. Because I think there was points where there's a lot of pressure on athletes in general to look a certain way and to be a certain way. And that might be how a performance athlete looks in one sense, but people are different. Like the way that I perform at my best will be different to how someone else performs. And nutritionally and kind of biomechanically, it's going to be slightly different. So I think I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be a certain way, to look a certain way, to eat in a certain way. And yes, you have to watch what you eat, but it's a case of like moderating it and knowing when it's okay. Like you've done 20 miles in a day, like you can afford to have a bit of downtime, or you go to a friend's 21st and you can have one beer. Like it's not a case of you going out a whole night out. It's being able to kind of moderate what you're having. It's not something I'm great at doing even now. It's kind of a case that there's still like little niggles in the back of your mind going, all right, you need to be on top of this. And it's more just a case of trying to be relaxed in myself and be like, right, you're okay. Like you can enjoy just being a normal person for a little bit and not have to worry about weighing food out or eating a certain way or not eating bread or carbs and stuff. It's a case of like your body needs it sometimes, and it's okay to just kind of chill. Yeah. You don't have to be on all the time.
Do you think that's exacerbated because you are a Paralympic athlete and because you're training and competing alongside, other people who are also very fit and will probably also watch their weight? Or is it exacerbated because of the fact that you spoke about when you were younger, for instance, and maybe being a little bit overweight? And I would imagine it's quite hard for you to lose weight, is it?
It's not hard. It's a case of I'm one of those people, I can look at something and it's just it piles
you want
on.
it.
Yeah. I just love food. Yeah. Like that's what it boils down to.
So
it's just to eat.
Yeah, I do. I just love food, and it's a case of I just have to be mindful of it. It's not a case that I have to be. I think at points when I was living down in England, it got to a point where it's obsessive, and I think now it's just a case of being mindful of it. It's like knowing when to and when not to, if that makes sense. I think in terms of elite sport, you're looking at marginal gains anyway, so it's a case of how does that kind of look in terms of what sport you are. And I think I'm at my happiest when I'm relaxed, and when I'm relaxed is when I'm not having to worry about anything else that goes on.
Things on the side. Yeah.
So I think it's just I'm in an environment now where everything's pulling towards one common goal. I'm not having to worry about nutrition too much. I've got a kind of stable routine with that. I'm not having to worry about S&C. I've got a stable routine with that. I've got everything kind of pulling in the same direction, rather than me having to kind of obsess over, or I need to be a certain weight, because that might be okay for athlete X, but I'm a different build. Like
exactly.
And because I still walk a little bit, because I don't want to lose that completely. I want to be able to, when I retire, like if we have kids and stuff, I want to be able to walk with them and stuff like that. It's a case of, if I don't use that, I'll lose it. So it's always a case of getting that balance between, right, I walk, so I'm going to have muscle around my legs. Some of the guys I race against aren't able to do that, so they're naturally going to be a little bit lighter because they've not got that muscle mass there. So it's about weighing up, right, this is what I need for elite sport, but this is also what I need for life. Like, there's got to be a balance there.
I found it quite interesting. You mentioned, again, when you were younger and all your mates, and you didn't even think about almost having a disability. That's amazing. I love that attitude. But were there times when you had to battle a little bit against adversity?
I think, it's more people's expectations of what you should be able to do with a disability. I think that was very much the case kind of later in secondary school, when you start to notice, oh, your friends are getting girlfriends and they're going out and partying and that kind of stuff. And I was lucky that I had sport to kind of fall back on as a kind of release for everything. So when I was getting frustrated that, okay, there's stuff that I couldn't do, or my friends are all getting girlfriends, and is the reason that people don't want to go on dates with me because I'm disabled and because the image that kind of comes with that, I had sport as a release. And that was my kind of, I can go to a track or I can go to a pool and I can not hurt myself in the sense, but I can push myself to the point where like I'm exhausted. Like that's all I need to kind of worry about. But it's those kind of, teenagers have doubts about themselves anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's just a bit.
Yeah.
I think it's just like a bit exaggerated in terms of, you've then got to think, right, how are people seeing me because I use a wheelchair? How are people seeing me because I walk slightly differently? And I think that all ties back in with a kind of wider social kind of acceptance of what disability is. And I think as I've got older, I've just been kind of like, I don't really care. Like, if people think a certain way because I use a chair, right, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
They're not the kind of people I want to be around.
Well, that's what I know. Surely it's just like, well, that's fine, but that you're not my type of person, then bye.
But when you're a teenager, you want everyone to like you, and you want you want to be in that kind of popular group. You want to be invited to things, and I think that was a struggle when you started to notice all your friends go off and do stuff, and then you're thinking, oh, is it this? Is it that? You're a teenager, you don't know, you don't know anything, but it's just you have those kind of thoughts there, and that's where I kind of lent on sport to kind of be my release. That was my kind of safe space. Because I didn't really want to talk about it. It's taken me a while to kind of not accept the fact that that was how I thought about things, but kind of accept, right, it is what it is. Like, some people think that way and kind of process it all. So I use sport as my kind of sounding board, my kind of release, and kind of just focused in on that probably more than I would have done otherwise.
Yeah,
it's a good thing to lean on.
Exactly. And now you've got a lovely girlfriend, Alice. Yes. So how'd you guys meet?
So, yeah, like I said, I moved up to Stirling in 2017. So I'd finished the World Championships in London, and I hadn't. Well, it's not that I hadn't raced as well as I thought. I'd raced the race tactically relatively well. We came into the last time straight. I was leading, and I could see the finish line. I was like, I'm going to win a World Championships here. And the finish line just got further and further and further away. And there was 20,000 people in the stadium. And I just saw guys come off the side of me. And there was just 1, 2, and just they kept going. So I went from being in a position where I thought I would win a World Championships to not even making the podium. And that broke me, completely broke me, because I'd never been that close to it before. So I came away from there just thinking, right, I need to change something. I can't go through that again. And bearing in mind, I was 21 at that point. Like, I was still relatively young. I was like, I need to change something. So I contacted a coach that I wanted to train with up here. There was already a training group in Glasgow. I was like, right, I'm going to move everything. Rang Stirling Uni on my way back from the World Championships to my mum and dad. So I think it's like a 2.5 hour drive. And within a week, maybe 2 weeks, I had everything sorted, from course to accommodation to scholarships.
That's
and it was
well impressive.
So you get something in your head and it's like, right,
I'm done.
Mom, I'm going. I'll see
I
you
need
later.
you in my life.
Yeah.
I know, it's so like...
So I moved everything up, and it was a case of, right, I'm going to throw myself into uni life and experience that, because it's an experience you only get once. And I think before I'd moved up here, I was very much like, right, I'm an athlete. I've got to be careful not to go out and drink. I've got to kind of shut off that social side a little bit more. Whereas I went to uni, and I was just like, I sat down with
Bring on the social life.
to a certain
Here
extent.
we go.
I was
An athlete,
Yeah.
not anymore.
but I was yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So I sat down with my coach. I was like, look, I need a bit of time just to kind of process what happened in London. He was like, go and enjoy Freshers Week. Like, embrace it, enjoy it, like, get to know people on your course.
And you were
like,
so young still. Like,
Yeah.
you were only 21.
Yeah.
You were so...
But I was a mature student when I came up, compared to the other freshers at Stirling. So it was a case of going out and enjoying myself. And I was just sitting in bed one night and scrolling through Bumble.
Do we want to know anymore? Is this
how it
PG?
started.
Yeah.
And then I met Alice, and that's it.
Yeah. And swiped right on, I think it's swiped right.
Is that what you do? Oh, by the way, I've never been on this thing called a dating app. But is that what you do? Is
Yeah,
like
you just
Tinder?
yeah.
No,
swipe.
right, I didn't realise it was the same.
And we matched up and kind of went on a date, and it's coming up to 5 years this year. So.
5 years, is that what it is?
But I didn't realise until maybe a year in, she watched me race in London, just on telly.
Oh my gosh.
And the way of social media, she was like, oh, I'll give him a follow on Instagram. And I followed back and just didn't realise at the time because I was like in my own little space of being a world champion.
And why would you? It's just a follower on your Instagram. Like, it's not anything.
And then, moved up. And I think it was within 2 weeks of being at uni. So I literally just got freshest week out of the way.
Oh my gosh.
I met Al, and then coming up to 5 years later, we've got house, dog, the whole shebang.
That's amazing.
The dog being the most important.
So it was definitely a brilliant move moving up here, right?
Things happen for a reason, and I think like I was at a point where I wanted to move out of home because I think everyone gets to the point where
love your mum, love your dad, but
I need my own space. And I think the setup in Glasgow in terms of training group and coach and everything was the perfect environment for what I needed at the time. It was a bit more kind of trusting in, right, here's the work to go and do it. And it also gave me the chance to try uni and have that as a kind of balance. So I found when I was at uni, when things weren't going great in training, I still had uni work to do, so I could switch off and do that. And when uni deadlines were getting stressed, I still had to train, so I could kind of use them off against each other.
And a girlfriend.
And a girlfriend,
Those were falling, I had to then try and make her happy in some way.
So it was just a case of kind of broadening myself a little bit and not kind of fitting myself into the right athletics is all I'm going to do.
So important, isn't it, to have that balance? And how helpful is Alice to your career and to what you do in terms of your sport?
Remember, she'll be listening.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what you're going to say.
Deliberately said, Alice.
Yeah. No, she's been a great help. And I think she's great at keeping me grounded. Like I say, when things aren't going great, she'll give me a kick on the backside and just get on with it. Like, stop stressing. And also when things are going great, she's very quick to like pull us back down to earth and make sure I don't get too carried away. But she's there at any track meet she can get to. She's there to help drive back. She's there to help video start if I need some kind of stuff there and support. So, and also just like as a normal relationship, having that someone there that you can kind of chat to and talk to when things aren't.
Best buddy.
Yeah, like you say, you're a Paralympian, but you're also a boyfriend. So it's not all about the sport.
Yeah.
Like there's another side to it that she's just my girlfriend.
Yeah, and I quite like that we've got to the point now where we're in a relationship that I can switch off from athletics and we can just watch some really bad TV, some cheesy TV, and just not talk about sport, which is great.
Just eat everything. And not worry about what I'm eating or what I'm drinking.
And obviously we have to do that at certain times, but it's a case of, right, I can just be, I can be weird, I can be, like, I don't have to worry about having this kind of athlete persona around it. Like, it's just...
You can just be you.
Yeah. But, like, a funny story on that, when we first met, I was really anxious about being in a chair around her because I'd had that kind of bad experiences before. So for the first month of dating, I'd just waddle around. So... First date was a safari park, and it was just a case of I forgot my chair and just waddled around, and it killed me. I had to take breaks every 20 meters and stuff because I couldn't do it. But because I had that kind of association when I was a teenager, I didn't want that to kind of come into uni. And it was only after she sat down and was like, "Look, just stop being an idiot. Like you're not fooling anyone. I know you're in a wheelchair. Like, I can tell."
I was going to say, did she know what you were doing?
Yeah.
Did she suss it?
Yeah. She was like, I know that's you. Like, I'm not expecting you to be anything different, so use it. So yeah, it took me a while to kind of get that in my head. And I think if it wasn't for her being as kind of get your head out your backside, like just stop being an idiot about it, that I probably wouldn't have felt as comfortable and kind of
It's so funny to like hear that side of you because you're so like up until now so strong-minded. Like I'll train if it's raining, if it's wet, I'll watch what I eat, I'll watch what I do. But somewhere in you, you're obviously cautious. Like of course you are, because you would if you weren't cautious, you would have been in your chair when you first started dating.
Yes,
girls are scary.
But it just shows that like sport you can concentrate on and you can put all your effort into it. However, everybody does have that side to them, and you had it with Alice.
Everyone's anxious about things, whether it's sport, whether it's work, whether it's relationships. Like It's just at that point in time, I was really, really nervous about it. And because I've moved up to Scotland, didn't really know anyone. It was like, right, I need to kind of make a good impression. Stupid when you think about it, but it was that kind of thing. And it took me a while to kind of get that in. And it was a long time of walking, because I can't walk very far, like it's really short distances. So it was like, right, I need to just stop and doing it. Like it took us ages to get anywhere.
That's a safari park for like 7 hours of the day. Alison.
Luckily, there was like benches dotted every sort of thing.
Just having a look at the monkeys.
Yeah. We go on that boat trip. I can sit down.
Anywhere else and sit down.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but that's the thing. Do you know what? You hit the nail on the head. Is relationships, full stop. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're able-bodied or disabled. They can be really stressful, can't they?
Yeah.
And
I'm sure she says the same.
But that first meeting, like I say, it doesn't matter who you are. There is always that fear, and I guess because you've had bad experiences in the past, so that fear is going to be heightened to a certain degree. I mean, fear is maybe too strong a word, but you know what I mean, isn't it?
Yeah, the
more
anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think with sport, you put on such a bravado, like I'm invincible.
Yeah.
I can take on the world. No one's better than me. And we're all terrified inside. Like it's just, and then a little insecurity can balloon up because you can only keep an act on for so long.
Like you did with Alice.
Yeah, it didn't last long.
And it's interesting what you said about that, that kind of persona that you put up, because it is true where, I suppose in many workplaces where you have to be almost someone else, or be this thing, being this entity, and it's almost like acting, isn't it, to a certain degree?
It is acting.
Like
I can remember in Tokyo and in World Champs prior, going into a call room, and like a call room is basically a room where you're sitting under a stadium with the 7 other guys that you're going to race against all eyeballing each other, trying not to look scared.
Oh, really?
And it's
trying not to look scared.
Yeah, trying not to look scared.
My hardest.
And you get some people that are really talkative, some people that look like they're going to throw up. You get and there's different dynamics there. But it's a big just contest. It's who can puff their chest out the most and who can like hide it. Which I'm not very good at. I sit there looking.
I'd be like, hello.
I know that I get nervous, and I know that's a big side of it. But it's just a big act.
Yeah.
And trying to explain that to people that it is just a big act. Like you go and you race, and okay, you're good at what you do, but beforehand you are terrified because everything you have goes into those 2 laps of the track. And with an 800, it's a bit different to a sprint. You're not in control of everything, so then you're more nervous because you have to plan for like 3 or 4 different scenarios. And you do all in training, but it's different when you go to a big race. And
it's now, and this is it.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've got a minute and a half to pull something out of my backside. Otherwise, it's 4 years down the drain.
Yeah.
And then when you come in and you add in the kind of funding aspect of it and the kind of financial gain that can come with doing really well at sport and being the best in the world at stuff, which is starting to come into Paralympic sport, but it's still a factor that can be in your back of your mind. If you've got to hit time targets or kind of funding conditions and stuff, your whole kind of wage for the next year could be relying on one race. And then that's another load of pressure. So it's adding to the act that you have to put on, not just to the guys you're racing against, but to like people, staff within the team. You don't want to look scared and nervous because you want to give off that impression, right? I'm in control.
You're confident.
God, that's interesting. I haven't actually thought about it. That it could be one race which has a huge impact on your funding.
Yeah,
like I've been funding cycles. But...
I've been self-funded since 2018, so I had a time target and a medal target in 2018 at Europeans. I hit my medal target and I didn't hit my time target. Everyone in that year in the world was slow, and I think only one other guy in the world hit the target that I would have needed.
And who was your target set from? Who was it set by? It
was set by British Athletics, and they have like funding criteria, and I didn't hit that time target, so I got dropped off funding, which it was a tough decision at the time, and it was one that I appealed and I tried to fight it, but it's a decision at the end of the day. It's done. But that one season, you go from having a stable an income to 3-4 weeks later having to find something. And I was lucky. I was in the situation where I was at uni, that I had scholarships, and I didn't have to worry too much about kind of having a job or paying rent or anything like that, because I had my student loan, I had everything else that kind of came with that kind of lifestyle. But it just puts a lot of pressure on an athlete. And it's the same, the more successful you get, it's like you have to win a gold medal at the championships to keep your funding, or you have to win it. So, and that's like, there's however many other people in an event, you're not always going to be the best person on the day. The weather can play an impact. Like, someone could just come out of the blue. And with Paralympic sport, that's probably more the case, because you can go from grassroots to elite sport like that. So someone could come out of the woodwork that you've never seen before and blow everyone out of the water. And then that's your funding
gone.
Yeah.
And you could have one bad day. I mean,
yeah.
You
Which
know,
I'm sure everybody does. Like, I'm sure you do. Like, I'm sure.
I have several.
Yeah, but we all do. Some days you wake up and you have just a really bad headache, or
it must have such an
sore
impact on
stomach
what
or
happens
whatever.
next, though, because if you're you like you say, where you're at in your life, you were okay. However, if you weren't okay, and that your priorities have to change because you have to pay rent, you have to do this, you can no longer fund the sport. You couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't.
And I think to a certain extent, I had to find that out after Tokyo, because I'd finished being a student, and it was like, right, you're out into the big wide world. Go and find something that you want to do. But at the same time, I'm still competing at a really high level. I still want to go to more Paralympic Games. So I still need to do the same amount of training as if I was being funded full time, on top of working and finding that balance, and finding a job that's flexible enough that, all right, I need to be able to go and compete. And it's a really hard thing to find.
Yeah, hard and stressful.
Yeah.
You know, I totally get that. It's really, when you're trying to juggle so many balls, you know that you need to do really well in one particular area. So actually, you should be concentrating 100% on just that.
Yeah.
But when you've got all the other stresses and strains, that's hard. How much is one of your chairs,
the race chairs? So it kind of depends on which manufacturer you go to, and they're all custom, so they're slightly different. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm racing a carbon fibre frame at the moment. I was able to get charity support to help fund it, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get it. But the frame alone would be kind of $4,500, $5,000, and then you've got two I set of carbon wheels on top, which are $2,000. Wow. Tires are tires on their own, like track tires, are £90-100 a pair, and they could pop just like that, and then it's spares. Gloves are $250. But that's
maintenance, like just
like that's kind of standard for a carbon chair. Aluminium ones are slightly less. I think they're kind of $2,500 for a frame. But I think Sauber designed one of the Swiss racers, Marcel Hug. They designed his chair for Tokyo, and it took them 4 years of kind of design, manufacturing stuff. But for chairs like that to be used, they have to be commercially available.
Right.
But it's getting a bit like track cycling. So they'll build chairs for their sponsored athletes, but they slap a huge 5-figure price tag on them. So if anyone wants to buy them, they can, but they have to pay through the nose to get it. And the chair's never going to be the deciding factor. It's always the athletes in it, because the chair will only go as fast as you can push it. And Marcel's a fantastic athlete. But they will get to a point where the marginal gains are going to be found in the technology.
Yeah.
So finances and that kind of stuff always comes into it.
You definitely need that money. What about when you're travelling then? Because that is a big piece of kit.
Yeah, very good insurance. And we have like travel boxes. So a company that makes bike boxes designed some ones for wheelchair racing, and you kind of put everything in there, and it's secure. So if anything does get damaged, it's taking a real big whack. But airlines aren't the most careful kind of companies in the world.
I remember Alice saying that you walk up to the airport and it's like all your equipment and just little her like pushing the trolley along.
Yeah.
She's like, you should see it, like the stuff that it comes in is amazing.
Just to try and get there unsafe, because if a set of wheels get broken, it's not just like the financial side of it. It's I needed them to race. And it's the same for any kind of sport that relies on equipment, whether it's pole vault, whether it's cycling and triathlon and stuff like that. You're always reliant on your equipment getting to somewhere safe.
And if you're not getting funding to go and compete, then are you just having to find the money every time you go and compete and travel? Yeah,
so for competitions I have to do that out of my own pocket, but in terms of accessing services, I'm lucky to be part of the Scottish Institute of Sport, so I get strength and conditioning support, I get nutrition support, I get psychology support, medical support, physios and stuff like that. So the kind of day-to-day costs that you'd associate with being an athlete, like getting soft tissue treatment or having an S&C coach to tell you what to do, that's all sorted through the institute. I'm very kind of fortunate to have it. But in terms of competitions and entries and travel, that all comes out of my pocket, because I need to do certain competitions to get in the right races to get quick times to then go and race. And it's not like the able-bodied circuit where you get prize money. It's a case of, oh, well done, you've done really well.
Is that, true? Really?
So tough.
So it's just literally about your your times.
You just turn up, get the times, and when you get the times, they're quick enough, you get selected. And
that's crazy.
So therefore, you can understand entirely the importance of doing well in something like Paralympic Games.
Yeah.
And then so you can get the sponsorship. And the money.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's hard. So when it comes to kind of jobs and things like that, and Stirling Uni, did you enjoy yourself first?
Yeah, I did. Stirling's a great uni, especially for sport, and they look after their athletes really well. So in terms of moving lectures around and moving like deadlines around, they were really good at being like, all right, you're away, let's move it around for you. You can have whatever time you need. So they were really kind of flexible and really supportive. Like while I was doing my degree, I had to do my dissertation at the same year as Tokyo, so it was always kind of a juggling act between the two.
What did you do it on?
So I did it on the representation of disability in children's literature.
Oh,
that was unexpected.
So, it's a little bit different. So I had to do an English dissertation. So I chose children's books because it didn't mean I have to read lots of novels.
There's genius behind the man.
And also, I think if we expose children to disability, it changes the assumptions really quickly and really early on, and then that filters into how adults think when they're growing up. So I think it's a really important stage of exposure. So I wanted to see what it was like.
And what was it like?
Mixed, really mixed. A lot of it portrays all visually appealing disabilities, so stuff like wheelchairs, prosthetic limbs, and as you go further back in time, so it was over a set period from like Of Mice and Men, which is a kind of classic, to like really modern day picture books. Like how it's interpreted has changed massively from like a really negative thing to a more positive thing, but still highlighting the fact that it's different.
God, that is such a great subject. What a brilliant thing. And it's, I mean, you're spot on. It's interesting when you look at the kind of younger generation. My kids, I have a 7-year-old and a soon-to-be 12-year-old, and both of them grew up with CBBS and things like that. Ash is looking at me with a blank look. Not there yet. One day. But they grew up, and of course, disability and disabled actors have been a huge part of their remit.
Yeah, BBC and CBBS have done a great job in getting that out there. Like, you just have to look at stuff like Newsround, and they've got disabled presenters and stuff on there. But it doesn't always translate the older you get. Like, Adi Ep01 has been the face of disability presenting across BBC Channel 4 for ages. But there's never been that much change from that. And you're getting a few more, especially around like the Invictus Games, that they brought a lot on there, and I know Steph Reed's doing a lot more, and you see more disability across like Dancing on Ice, I'm a Celeb, and that side of it, but it's not as mainstream in terms of that presenting side of it as you may think.
I'm going to ask you a question then. Do you think, because you're speaking to someone who works within that industry, now you're right, I don't see many disabled journalists, and actually,
you're around journalists every day.
I've often wondered, when it comes to football, for example, which I go to a lot regularly, not every single weekend, but regularly, and you never see anyone a journalist in a wheelchair. And actually, I have asked the question before to clubs, what would you do if you had a disabled reporter who needed to use a wheelchair? Where would they go? Oh, they'd probably go down with all the other wheelchair. Well, that's not good enough. They need somewhere so they can put a laptop and things like that. And that side of things is very far behind in my experience. There's certainly a lot more diversity and inclusion and equality when it comes to hiring of new staff, and that's all fantastic. But you're right, I haven't seen many.
There's no face of it. There's no kind of movement towards primetime ITV, primetime Sky, primetime BBC.
But do you think that's because, though, sorry to butt in, but do you think that that is because they're not putting themselves forward, or just that the opportunities are not there?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
I think because there's not been the pathway through for people to go down that route before, it's a bit like, we don't know which doors to knock at. Yeah. And I think also because there's not been anyone really outside of kind of Addy that I can think of off the top of my head go down that route, the companies and broadcasters don't know how to.
They're not set up.
Don't know how to incorporate it. And I think the people that tend to go into presenting, especially in the sporting sense, are ex-athletes who are quite flexible in terms of, right, I'll find a way of getting around it, whether there's a boundary there. It's not a case of you getting someone in fresh out of uni or fresh out of a kind of a college degree doing journalism that's going into that and might not be as, not outgoing, but kind of used to kind of puffing the chest out and kind of working their way around things. And that might be a bit of a stereotype, but that's just kind of what I've seen come through. So I think it's a mixture of both, like I say, not knowing which doors to knock at, and the environment maybe not being best suited at the moment for them to thrive.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Asha, I know that one area that People's Forward is very strong on is mobility vehicles. Yeah. So, and that's something that you yourself have
Yeah, I drive.
I
drive.
We recently
tell us
about
your car.
I know it was brilliant. I know, like you say, I know you are a driver. It doesn't.
It shocks a lot of people when you say you drive and you're in chair, and I don't get why. Like,
no, I know someone who is incredible who, has many disabilities and who drives a car.
Like, I think it's great because all I have to do is pull a lever and push it to go quicker and go slower. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world. But no, it's great. Like, without the Motability scheme, I wouldn't have been as independent as I am, because like, you want to be able to drive. Like, I don't want to get driven around all the time. Like,
because that is like one of those things, isn't it? It's like, it is just pure independence. Like, you can come and go, or even without Alice. Like, as much as you love Alice, it's like,
I don't want to spend every day with her.
You're not my driver. It's so like, of course it is. It's just that whole independence element that you. I remember when we had just recently filmed together, and you had said like one of the adaptations on the car we were filming with was the swivel seat, and you were like, oh, I was like. Because even to me, I was like, that's a brilliant, like something so basic but so brilliant is so beneficial. And you were like, no, it was never for me, because you would get used to having something like a swivel seat, and I still need to travel with my friends and my family who won't have swivel seats. And that was like why you were like, oh, I don't need it. Yeah. And I would just get used to it. When it's something that I actually don't need, I would just be being whatever, just for the reason for having it.
I think with me driving, I was always like, I just want it to be as normal as possible. And it was a case that I love my cars and I'm quite into that whole kind of automotive world. So I wanted a car that looked good, drove well, I could have a bit of fun with, fitted all my equipment in. That was always a pain in the backside to try and get everything in.
And the dog.
What did you get? What kind of car?
So the first one I had was at like a different brand from Ford, but I've had a Cougar before. And that fit everything in really well. The cars on Motability and Ford and stuff are all great. They're all really good. And in terms of how they drive and everything like that, they're amazing. It's just, I wanted the adaptation-wise to be as minimal as what I needed.
I don't understand the process. Can you talk me through it? I really know nothing about them.
So
cars.
With Motability, you can start to learn a year earlier, so you can get used to all the adaptations. So you go for a kind of assessment. And basically, you go to somewhere, in my case, it was an industrial estate in Shrewsbury, that you go and try all the different adaptations out, and you see, right, which ones suit you and which ones you need. And that can range from my basic one, which is a push-pull accelerator. So you've got a plate over the pedals, you pull the lever back to accelerate, you push it forward to brake, and the indicator's just on top of there. And that's it. And you drive an automatic, because trying to do gears and clutches and stuff would just be a bit of a pain. But that was it for me. So I went there as a really quick appointment. I think it was like 15, 20 minutes. Yep, that's what I need, and done. And then you go to a dealership, you look at the Motability cars, and you're like, right, which ones suit my needs? And there's different down payments and stuff that you pay for different cars. And obviously the bigger the car, more toys and stuff that you want on it, more extras and stuff, the more the down payment is. Mm-hmm. But there's cars you can get on there that are completely free, and you just go and get that. And
like you say, it's all based on your needs, isn't it? You want that extra, you want that big boot for equipment and
It's
the
going to
dog.
cost a little bit more.
You have to, yeah. It's just
So if people
it's
want to
just
do
tough.
it and they want to get into mobility schemes or things like that, so how would they go about doing it?
Just go into your local dealership. I think that's the best way. Most dealerships have a mobility expert now that knows, one, what all the rates are, so you know how much you have to pay. Two, where to look for all the adaptions, and also they know the range a little bit better. So if you don't have any idea about cars, I was lucky enough that I was sad. I sat there up on YouTube and I knew which one I wanted before I went in. But you can go in and you can be like, right, this is what I need, and they'll kind of point you in the right direction. And then once you order that car, they'll put all the adaptions on for it. That's all sorted. You then have that car for 3 years. And then after the 3 years, you can either choose to extend the lease on that one car, or you can hand it back and get a new car. Wow. And you can go to a different manufacturer, you can stay with the same one. It's completely up to you after those 3 years. And obviously the prices may change of different down payments and stuff, but that's usually how it works. So as a teenager, it's great because 17, brand new car, like hand controls, it was great. And then 20, I was like, oh, I can get a new car now. Like, it's fantastic.
That's so cool.
But it's always around what you need, and all the adaptions. Once you have the adaptions there, Motability and the dealership will look after all the servicing and all the kind of upkeep of that. So you don't actually have to worry about anything apart from putting fuel in it.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, because there's so many different benefits, isn't there?
Yeah.
2 free drivers, roadside assistance.
Insurance. When you're 17 and you're like, oh, I don't have to pay insurance.
Really? See, I just think it's really great to highlight this because there'll be so many people who probably
are
will be in the same
quite
situation and genuinely quite scared and just have no idea how to go about approaching this.
Yeah. But I think, especially when I was younger, I saw all my mates going, oh, I'm not sure I can afford to get a Polo with the insurance. It's like 3 times like 3 times the value of the car. And I'm like, well, I've got this nice new Cougar and it fits everything in. And
most importantly, like you can't, like it's adapted to you. So some people out there who may believe that they'll never drive or they can't drive or they have these misconceptions, and until they speak to someone and understand that it is possible. The adaptations are unbelievable across these cars. So it's totally, when we had filmed, we had a Tornado, and the adaptations we had on it were just
way more than I needed.
Way more. But honestly, some of the, from like swivel seats through to the wheelchair box on the roof, they are unbelievable.
Yeah, and if anyone wanted to come to People's Forward, there's something that they can entirely could do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, it's really fascinating. What about a driving test? What was that like?
Exactly the same.
Was it?
Exactly. So my driving instructor was just a normal mainstream driving instructor who I knew his son threw javelin at the local athletics club. And I was just like, would you mind taking us out? It's not got dual controls, so like you're just gonna have to trust me a little bit.
Just trust me.
And he was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I'll just take you out. So it was just normal lessons. I know Motability is a scheme. They offer you so many free lessons with adaptive instructions and stuff. But I was like, oh, no, I'll just go out with the guy that I know. So
just take the risk.
I'll take
the
as long as you don't mind, mate.
He took us out on driving lessons. My mum braved jumping in the car with me, and then it was just a normal driving test. Like the only difference is I drove an automatic, so I didn't have to worry about stalling at a roundabout or on a hill start or anything. But all the manoeuvres are exactly the same. The test's exactly the same.
That's so cool. And I guess, from that moment on, you were 17 and you're like, it must be a real sense of freedom. The fact that actually you don't have to ride anyone to drive you.
Yeah. My first journey was from my home in Newport. So Newport, Shropshire, it's like the middle of nowhere. It's fields and sheep next to you. My first journey was along the M6 to train at Coventry. That was the first time I passed my test. It was just like, I need to go. Like, I don't want them to drive me there anymore.
Insane.
Yeah, I know. There's something definitely.
I had a sat nav on, so I couldn't get lost.
And, I've done I did the M6 not that long ago actually, but it was slow because of traffic. But those motorways are quite hardcore. You must find it quite nice coming up to Scotland and the
nice
little
roads.
It's quite kind of quiet.
The amount I end up driving, it's just a lot anyway. So you just end up getting used to it. The amount of miles you end up clocking up going backwards and forwards to training, and then my mum and dad still live down in England, so going down and seeing them and
just
family
life
and stuff. Just life stuff.
Where are you training them most of the time at the moment?
So it's a bit all over the place. At the moment, my coach is. So I had to change coaches because the one I moved up here with, Ian, he kind of took a step back and wanted to live a normal life away from athletics for a wee bit. So I moved coaches who is based down in Cheshire, so we do a bit of a remote kind of setup because I've been competing now for far too long. I can be trusted to. He gives me a session. I know how to kind of moderate it. So we do a kind of remote thing. So I'll go down and see him once, maybe twice a month for some like one-to-one stuff. But the rest of the time I'm kind of up here. I've got a training partner that we kind of split our time between Glasgow and Falkirk. Training there. My strength and conditioning stuff's in Stirling. So it's all kind of split between those kind of three bases.
Great.
But it's quite lucky that everything's within like half an hour of where
Yeah,
I live. So it's not like I'm driving an hour and a half every day to get somewhere.
Yeah, and you've got a brilliant job as well, which obviously allows you the time and
Yeah.
the time to
Yeah.
be able
So
to do stuff.
well, I started the job, 6 weeks ago now, and it's with Scottish Disability Sport. So I'm helping with the kind of grassroots participation level for disability sport. So I feel like I'm giving something back. Like it's a job, but it feels like my wheelhouse a little bit because I kind of know how hard it was for me to get into sport, and I want to try and make that route a little bit easier for other people. So I'm working with the Lothian branch. The term of it is Lothian Disability Sport. So we basically cover Edinburgh and then all of the Lothian regions. So it's quite a big remit, but it's just about getting more opportunities there for people with disabilities to get involved in sport, whether that's people that want to compete at a high level, or whether that's people that just want to do a swimming lesson or a swimming club, or
Is this like juniors all the way through?
the whole way through.
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
So because it's a sporting organisation, they get the commitments that come with sport, but they also get how much that I can give back by having gone through that experience. So it's a nice working relationship. I'm
Even
really
for
enjoying
parents, like I can imagine if you have a child and they are disabled, like your mum had you, like to be part of groups like that for like just like friendship groups and things, and to open their eyes up to a world that this is a possibility. Like you could become an athlete. You could make this your life, just like Ben has.
Yeah.
Like it must be very.
And some people
rewarding.
won't want to do it. Like some people won't want to go as far as kind of elite level sport or even competitive sport. They just like the social side of it, and that's great.
Yeah.
But I want to give you as many choices you want to do. So whether you want to do kind of rock climbing or swimming or athletics or kind of whatever in between, like
whatever it is, just tell me.
And it's just the fact that it's there and it's available and you can do it.
Yeah, because I know how hard it was for me to find sport, and if it wasn't for one good PE teacher, I probably wouldn't have found it.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a case of like, if I can get one person into sport, then I've done my job. But
like you say, you know it, because if it wasn't for your PE teacher, you wouldn't have got into where you are now. So you could be that. You're the new PE teacher, hopefully for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But yes, it's just a fun place to be, and it's exciting because you can see a change, and you can see that kind of happening at the ground level, rather than kind of looking at, I'm an athlete, I'm looking down, I'm seeing more. You can see how it works a little bit more, so it's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, certainly sounds like. Just two final questions. Asha, first up, what's it been like working with people like Ben and?
Be nice.
Oh no, be nice. Is it the Alice question all over again? Yeah, great. Yeah, we have a great time. No,
you do a lot though. I mean, we do. Credit where credit's due.
Ben is. Ben does all the hard work. He just has to show up and speak about himself. But as you have learned, like he's the best thing about Ben. You're an open book in the nicest of ways. Like you don't take anything personally, and you are so open to speaking about disability and being a young man who's in a wheelchair, and it's just so inspiring. Like I just can't believe that you still there's something, your brain has something in it that you just continue to push, and I love the fact that you see something and you go for it. Like I wouldn't go to the gym if it was raining, and even like the basic things in your life that you just continue to do, like you're self-funded, but you know that you have to just keep going and going and going. And like you say, it's not like you're getting these big payments at the end of every race. You just walk away from it and you think, right, okay, I'm one step closer to where I need to be.
Yeah.
And that's still a good couple of steps away from you, but you know, right, okay, let's just do it in baby steps. Like we'll do it. So no, it's just so easy. Like it's and that's how it should be, and it's great. And we always have a good, like this is the second time, so we've had great fun. Like it's been and it's not the last.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's fantastic, and but great that People's Forward are taking the initiative and doing things like this and doing things a little bit differently and working with fine people like yourself.
You're
Ben.
just Ben.
There
You're
we
unfortunately, I'm bringing you that back down to earth. You're just Ben.
That's fine.
I'm sure you
That's
see it that
fine.
way as well. So you are just Ben, but
Yeah.
what's your next big thing? What's your grand ambition now?
So we've obviously got the Paralympic Games in Paris in 2024. So it's been a shorter kind of turnaround from Tokyo than what it normally would be. For that, so it's a case of kind of all kind of looking ahead to that, kind of professionally with athletics. Unfortunately, I injured myself 6 weeks ago. I tripped over my own feet around the house.
Oh no.
And landed on my shoulder. So I'm rehabbing that at the moment. But I'm still hoping to go out and compete in Switzerland at the end of the month, just to kind of see where I'm at. Like I know I'm not 100% fit, but just to kind of see where I am, because it's a long winter not to do anything at the end of it. So try and work towards that. Unfortunately, we've not got World Championships this year due to COVID restrictions. It was supposed to be in Kobe in Japan, which would have been great to go back, because I would have loved to explore a bit more in Japan and kind of see it a bit more as a country. But unfortunately, there's not an event there. It's been postponed. So yeah, I've not got a World Championships to go for, and unfortunately, I've not got an event at Commonwealth Games. Just the way the schedules kind of worked out this year, they've not got a kind of full para program, so I've not got an event there. So it's a bit of a down year, which is quite nice. It means that I can kind of explore other things. I can get my feet under the table at a new job. I can sort my shoulder out and kind of not have that pressure to try and make a kind of international team and kind of chase times and chase things and rush things through. I can kind of take a step back and be like, right, take in what I learned from Tokyo and the mistakes that I didn't make there, because I didn't win a medal. So there's obviously going to be lots of mistakes that I need to work on, and just kind of reassess a little bit and kind of look at the next 2 years as right. There's a Worlds next year in Paris. There's then a Paralympic Games in Paris. It's an hour's crossing from the UK. I can bet that there's going to be a lot of friends and family wanting to be there, so I need to make sure I get my place there first. And in order to do that, realistically, I need to be top 3, top 4 in the rankings consistently in the world. So it's just a case of making sure I'm up there competing, and just take it day by day. Try not to stress too much about everything.
That sounds like a very good philosophy for life in general. Well, Ben, listen, all the best for that. Hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon. Thank you for being a brilliant guest on Take the Wheel. And
Our
Asha,
first
thank
podcast
you.
guest.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
lovely to speak to you both. And Asha, we'll catch up
Thank
with you for
you.
episode 2.
Yes, we shall.
Thanks for listening.